Joining us now, as he does every Monday during the college football season, is ESPN's Trevor Matich, college football insider, expert, analyst, all-around good man, and he is a BYU national champion. For another Matich Monday, Trevor, welcome back to BYUSN.
Good to be back, guys. It's been a party, hasn't it?
Everything's awesome,
fun,
to say the least. At the midway point of the season, BYU is 6-0, most recently handling that added national spotlight, not stumbling under that pressure and delivering, Trevor. So what are your takeaways from BYU and Arizona initially?
The biggest thing is points off turnovers. They've been doing this all year, and they just doubled down in this game. I mean, they had 4 takeaways on defense, and they turned it into 24 points. There was a interception at the 1-yard line that was hardly a short field, but they drove the ball 99 yards for a touchdown. So they took points away. They added points. That's 7 off turnovers. Then there was an interception. They took over at the 9-yard line, punched it in for a touchdown, 14. Then there was a fumble recovery at the 15. Didn't do anything offensively, but kicked a field goal, 17 off of turnovers. And then Isaiah Glasker has that pick 6 at the end, 24 points off turnovers on a day when BYU scored 41 total and gave up only 19. And that kind of opportunistic play just keeps getting better and better.
Against Kansas State and now Arizona, the first 2 possessions of the second half result in turnovers and touchdowns, and it's like, what? This is a repeat. This BYU defense is the greatest thing about this team right now. If BYU forces 2 takeaways at least every game the rest of the season, Trevor, that's going to mean BYU is going to win 10, 11, maybe 12 games.
Right, and it's the takeaways take away drives. And that's important from the opposing offense. But it's the fact that they're able then to turn them into points. Now, the pick 6s or the fumble recovery that they had for a touchdown, that's direct points, obviously. But the thing about this BYU offense is they've had trouble with the running game because of injuries. They got their top 2 guys back for this game against Arizona, and it really showed in a positive way. But the fact that the offense is able to take those takeaways and turn them into points. And that's when the offense is at its best. They come onto the field with expectation that they're now going to score, and they do most of the time. That's what's most impressive about that.
Trevor, at this point, what is the primary criticism of BYU football? And I ask that because Kalani Sitake said right after the game that he and Jay Hill were on the field and they were complaining about this and that, and he came over and he shared that with me in the post game, and I wondered, well, what is it that he is upset about or bothered by? And so I'm asking you the same question. What is the criticism of BYU at 6-0?
Well, there are a few things. One is that the defense, as opportunistic as it's been, is still allowing a lot of yards and a lot of third down conversions. These are things they can get better at. I mean, against Arizona, they allowed 58% third down conversions. That's losing football. But then they took the ball away, and then on 3 drives, they stopped them on 4th down. Arizona had 11 drives in this game. And of those, 4 takeaways, 3 stops on 4th down, and that's why they only scored 19 points. So on the one hand, it's phenomenal that the Cougars defense is getting all these key plays in key moments to keep teams out of the end zone. But at the same time, when some of those takeaways dry up, they're going to need to just get stops on 3rd down. It's something they're capable of doing, but they need to stay in the drawing board and figure out ways to get those key stops. And offensively, it's the same thing. I mean, their 3rd down conversion percentage for this game against Arizona was 36%. That's not winning football either. But they've had enough big plays and they've had enough short fields that it hasn't shown up yet. Well, when they don't have as many big plays or short fields, they're going to need to grind it out. That 99-yard touchdown drive was very important because it showed that that they're getting better at that. But these kinds of situations where the situational big plays don't come in bunches like they have the last few weeks, they'll need to improve on some of the basics on 3rd down on both sides of the ball.
BYU's run game got the addition of L.J. Martin back since Game 2 against SMU after he was injured. Hinckley Ropati as well was in there. 5.4 yards per carry. Right now it's 4.21 for the season, 78th in the country. So it's not the greatest number ever, but it's way better than it was last year. How much better was the run game against Arizona and perhaps moving forward?
It was everything. Arizona had to stop the run first. And with those 2 guys out, the 3rd and 4th and 5th running backs that went in fought hard. They made some nice plays, but they didn't scare any defenses. Now, in this game, Rapati averaged over 7 yards per carry. LJ averaged 4.5 yards per carry, and he added a 33-yard completion reception in the passing game. So having both of those guys in and the different things that they can do at a high level is everything, because it makes everybody better. It slows down the pass rush because they have to worry about the run first. It makes the offensive line look better because the holes that open now are being hit on time, instead of guys that don't have those reps, don't have that experience, are not hitting those holes maybe at exactly the right time. So the offensive line now is looking like it really ought to look from a standpoint of what they're accomplishing. Helps the quarterback, and that helps the receivers. And the strength of this offense, I still believe, is the group of pass catchers at wide receiver, tight end, and running back. And so being able to run the ball first is one of the fundamentals of football. BYU has won without that. And now that they've got that back against this Arizona defense, they did really well in the running game, and that establishes a foundation that everything else is built from.
ESPN's Trevor Matich is on BYU Sports Nation. Now we turn the page to Oklahoma State making the trip to Provo for what is going to be maybe a cold, rainy Friday night. Temperatures expected in the high 40s, 50 degrees. So it's going to be very different than what BYU has played in. That said, Oklahoma State is a team that's lost 3 straight, Trevor. They look like a shell of themselves, or at least of what we expected them to be, but they've had a bye week to try and get right. So what do you make of this matchup with Oklahoma State and BYU?
This is a dangerous game for BYU, and there have been several dangerous games for BYU this season, and they've risen to the occasion every time. This is yet another one for a different reason. You mentioned that bye week. That's important because this Oklahoma State team came into the season as one of the most experienced teams in the nation in certain places. You start with their running game. One of the most experienced offensive lines in the nation entering the season. Ollie Gordon was an All-American running back last year. Things have not worked out for them this year. They haven't been performing at the same level. But it's largely the same group of key players that went to the Big 12 championship game against Texas last year. Now with a week off to be able to rest, recuperate, figure things out, and figure out how to deploy those assets again is dangerous for BYU. Remember that last year, for the first 3 or 4 games of the season, their running back, Ollie Gordon, wasn't used all that much. They made some changes, and then he came out gangbusters and became the most productive running back in all of college football. They've got that same opportunity to reset now. And so I wouldn't look at Oklahoma State's record and say, yeah, well, they're not very good. This will be easy for BYU. BYU's undefeated. Yay, woohoo, no one can stop us. Well, no, it's not that way. If this is another quality win if BYU is able to pull this off.
Bruce Mitchell started at center. As a former center at BYU, how would you evaluate the third string's performance in a big win against Arizona?
He did well. The big key, if you come in off the bench as an offensive lineman, is how to define success. It's not necessarily to hit a guy and drive him 3 yards down the field every play. It is to get on the right guy with the right target. In other words, your head's on the right side, and then stay on your feet. If you fall down, you cause a pile, and a lot of bad things happen for the offense. If you stay on your feet and keep pushing, and just push him farther than he wants to go, even if he goes a direction you don't want him to go, then that gives the running backs an option to cut back around that block. It gives the quarterback the ability to move in the pocket and to still have time to throw the ball. And that's where I thought he did a good job. He stayed on his feet. He stayed in the fight. And he didn't put himself out of the fight by laying on the ground all game, which a lot of backup offensive linemen will do.
ESPN's Trevor Matich still with us on BYU Sports Nation as we now look at the national polls. BYU in at number 13, and that number carries some significance, Trevor, because BYU's picked to finish 13th in the conference, and now here they are, number 13 in the entire country. Yet there are some BYU fans that feel like BYU should be in a better spot, almost a little disrespect. How do you view BYU at number 13, and should it be a little bit better of a national ranking based on their resume?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that the fans have those expectations right back up in the clouds again. That's a good thing. And they have those expectations because the team has given them reason to have those expectations. So that is good. I think BYU's ranked right now about where they ought to be. When you look at the 3 teams behind them, that's where the real danger is, because you're looking at Texas A&M, Boise State, Indiana, 3 teams that are playing exceptional football right now. And that's the danger of maybe getting bumped berth. All these things that I'm telling you are what matter a whole lot more than the rankings right now. The rankings right now are exciting, they're fun to look at, and the expectations for the fans are a great sign that this team is giving them reasons to believe in them.
Give me a sense of how big the blue goggles are for you right now. Because BYU 6-0, you were part of the only undefeated team in BYU history. You don't know you're going to go undefeated until you do it, right? But so far, so good for BYU. We're talking playoff. We're talking Big 12 contention. We're talking back six now as BYU's halfway through the season. How you feeling about all this? And what's the reasonable record to expect in the final six for BYU? Because so far, it's been awesome.
And it has been, but my blue goggles are not big, giant Elton John goggles. They're small, round John Lennon goggles because of the way they've been winning. They have been playing clean football. I mean, this game against Arizona, they had 1 turnover to Arizona's 4. They had 3 penalties to Arizona's 8. That's great. But there will be times when it doesn't work out that well, and they have to win other ways. They've been getting lots of takeaways, scoring lots of points off takeaways. There'll be times when they need to win in other ways. And so far, they've shown they've been able to do all of those things. But there's still a lot of improvement that they have the capability of making. And before those glasses grow from little bitty John Lennon's to big, giant Elton John, I want to see some of those other things come together. From a standpoint of the rest of the season, it's a tough schedule. There's some tough teams that are going to play BYU tough, because all of a sudden BYU went from being the team everybody would get well on, which was last year down the stretch. BYU had injuries. They, lost their last 5 straight, and every team that they played were thinking, okay, here comes BYU. Good, we're going to win this game. Now they're thinking, oh, look, BYU, they're ranked in the top 15. They're everybody's talking about them. They're undefeated right now. We're going to show that we're better than them, and we're going to whip them. And it's going to be, if not their Super Bowl, certainly their AFC Championship game. And so all of a sudden, BYU is not sneaking up on anybody. And so that makes it all the more difficult for them to finish undefeated. However, if they continue to win the turnover battle, win the penalty battle, and turn takeaways into points, they will be there with everybody, and they have a chance to beat everybody on their schedule. So those goggles do have a little corner that are deep royal blue, or rich royal blue, that says there is undefeated regular season on the table for this team. Now, that's as a fan, I would be thinking. As an analyst, I'm thinking, okay, it's possible, but they got a tough one coming up this week.
Fantastic stuff with the always educated and well-incited Trevor Matich of ESPN. We appreciate the time, Trevor. As always, great stuff.
Thanks, guys.